I personally think that you really need to rethink and understand properly what a podcast is, specifically what a B2B podcast is, because you think about what's a podcast. Well, people think a podcast is just audio only, and they think that it's like a bunch of their friends sitting around talking about books and movies that they like. And I guess that's okay, but you as a business owner, right, as a service provider, as an entrepreneur, as someone that perhaps owns a SaaS or a website, or is a book author, or is a coach, or is a leader, a podcast needs to be a lot more than that. And a podcast even needs to be even more than a content channel. And it can start as a content channel, right? If you're an author, here's a really easy formula for you to start but not continue your podcast forever, because eventually you will run out of information, I guarantee you. But here's how you'd start a podcast. Let's say you have a book and you want to tell someone about it, and you want to tell them all the people, like the reasons they should get it and all the type of people that would enjoy it. Can you do that in 3 to 5 minutes? Can you explain what problem out there exists that really gets you so angry? Can you tell somebody what alternatives exist or have been tried that maybe aren't quite effective? Can you tell me how you yourself were frustrated with this solution for health, or for leadership, or for money, or for solving this business problem, and that was the genesis of your book? Can you tell someone about the ideas, concepts, terms, principles? Can you tell someone a step-by-step process of how to maybe begin solving their weight loss problem, how to begin solving their money problem, how to solve this specific problem in technology or in business? You can condense that into 3 or 5 minutes, and that could and should be the first episode of your podcast. Just tell me what you're all about. Tell me your solution. If I met you at a networking event and you had to stand up and talk for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, what would you say? Great first episode. And then what do you do? Well, let's say you had a book and you can easily just open the book, and you're not reading the whole entire contents of your book chapter, but let's say in chapter 1 of your book, there's just a really core idea. And if someone heard about this for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, they wouldn't get exactly the same as if they read chapter 1 of your book, but they'd really have a good understanding. And maybe it's even been a year or two since you wrote your book, and it's time to revisit that and kind of spruce it up there and say like, well, hey, here's some expanded, extended ideas that chapter 1 of my book spoke about. So you don't have to be exhaustive, but just crack open your book and look at what's a really powerful idea from chapter 1 that could really wake somebody up, and then at the end say, hey, by the way, check out my book. Do that for each of your chapters. Heck, flip through your book and choose a random page, choose page 45, and ask and figure out, well, what question could someone ask that the answer to that question is on page 45 of your book? Let's say someone then reads page 45 of your book, and what new question does that pop up that perhaps your book doesn't address directly or that you thought of later? So questions and answers are really great for brainstorming and coming up with ideas for what your podcast could be about. And then you think about just ideas you've had, breakthroughs that you've had in your career, stories, people that you've helped, and who have helped you. And those are all great ideas, tools that you use, software and otherwise. So now we're coming up with like 20 or 30 episodes of your podcast. But at this point, let's say you start a podcast. And by the way, my website is dfypodcast.com. I am all about finding and helping adventurous entrepreneurs using podcasting to cultivate business. And so if you have an idea for a podcast to enhance your business, just record your content, send us the videos from your phone, from OBS, from Zoom, from Riverside, any which way you can record it, and we will add music, show notes, SEO, we'll make the reels, the quote cards, we'll put them on your website, put them on YouTube, put them on Apple Podcasts, distribute them to the podcast platforms. That's how we'll get your podcast up and running and set up. But once you get to, say, 30 episodes, you're going to find it a little difficult to keep the habit going, right? Habits don't last forever. And you might be publishing weekly, but maybe you miss a week or two, or you're kind of ending up late. The well is beginning to run dry. Now, what's the answer? Now, here's what podcasting is all about. Are you ready? Relationships, conversations, back and forth. you find people to invite onto your show. Now, who do you invite? Well, if you open LinkedIn or any social media, you have people. If you look at your phone contacts, even better. If you show up to appointments, which I do several per week, I use Calendly, I use Zoom, I use Google Calendar, I show up to meetings, and meetings that you've appeared on with people, contact those people and say, hey, it's been a while since we talked about such and such a service I provide or that you provide. Would you like to be on my podcast? And we'll just kind of revisit that and talk about you and your secret sauce. And then what you do is you look at people that you're already speaking to strengthen those relationships, right? Who are your customers? Who are your recent customers? Who are your high-ticket customers? Who are your current recurring customers? If you're in business, you probably have a lot of people like that. You can look at your peers, people who have complementary businesses from you. You think about who are your maybe weaker customers? Who has not bought in a while, or who kind of buys low ticket that maybe could buy something more? You look at, now we're getting into a few years back. You're looking at, well, who are my past friends, clients, mentors? Who's someone I really could reconnect with? Will you invite them to be on your podcast? What you do is you sign up with Google Calendar if you don't have it already. You use a free zoom.us account. Zoom will allow you to meet with someone for up to 45 minutes, and you show up, and you could just start a Zoom that's just you, a Zoom room, click record, you talk, you're on camera. That's how you can create your content. That way, if a second person shows up, now you're side by side, you record that conversation. Then you use Calendly, that's Calendly, to give yourself office hours, and you can tell someone, hey, would you like to be on my podcast? Here's the calendar, choose this time slot, and then when they register, it gives them a Zoom link to join when the meeting is coming up closer. They get a reminder, you show up, you have a conversation, you talk, you record, and now you have these guests on your podcast. And this gives you a few things. First of all, it gives you unlimited content because you begin to run out of content after 20 or 30 episodes. If you're good, you get to 50. If you're really good, you get to 100 episodes, but you start to run out of content. So what do? You have these guests on to provide the content for you. You ask them about what's their business. You ask them about their struggle stories. You ask them about their case studies. You ask them about the problems happening in their industry. Who's solving it in the wrong way? You ask them about their customers and the before and after picture. What problem did someone have before they came through their door? And then what kind of transformation happened? What are some tips? What are some next steps? What could someone begin to do to solve their health problems, financial problems, to solve their business problems, to figure out this skill? And you can use those questions and those templates to have an unlimited number of creative, engaging, awesome conversations. You record it, you give it to my team, we figure out the titles, we figure out the tags, we figure out the description, we figure out the show notes. You tell us how often you want us to post it. Is it a daily show, a weekly show, twice monthly show? We get it scheduled, and then you follow up with your guest, and you say, hey, here's where the episode's live, and here's the link. You can promote this link. Here's what you can paste on social media. Here are some graphics. Here are some reels. You give your guests all these tools to promote, and you follow up. And when you have guests on your show, you can kind of get your offer in front of them, right? You approach them, you say, would you like to be on my podcast? They say, sure, yes. They might not have spoken to you otherwise, but because you're offering them a seat on your podcast, you're delivering value, right? They appear on your podcast, they get to get their message out, they can use your platform for exposure, they appear authoritative because they've appeared on some other kind of, not the local news, but on a news kind of a platform. You're helping them out. And then they'll listen to you. And you can drop in your offer and say, hey, thanks for registering. It's on this date. By the way, did you know we manage podcasts at dfypodcast.com, or you drop in whatever your service is instead. And then when it comes time to meet up on the Zoom session and record, you open the Zoom room, you haven't clicked record yet, you meet, you look at the bio they sent in, look at their website, and you say, hey, my website is dfypodcast.com. We manage podcasts. Just wanted to get that in your head. Wanting to let you know that's something we do. You drop in whatever your offer is instead. You record the podcast, and at the end, you wrap up. You say, hey, thanks for doing this. Here's when it goes live. Here's some next steps. And by the way, if you want us to set up that next phone call with you about this service, if you want me to send a copy of my book, whatever the next step is in your funnel, that part's up to you. You drop it in again. When the episode goes live, you follow up again. When the episode is 3 months live and you want them to promote again, you drop in your offer again, not necessarily to get them to buy from you. If you meet someone and they're an ideal prospect for what you provide, product, service, book, app, SaaS, whatever, that's great. But maybe they're just not interested in you. They're just not that into you. What do you do then? Well, then you should work on having that person be your referral source, which means register to be your affiliate, to recommend you to someone else, to post about you on their social platforms. Now, why would they do that? They do that because you've already provided value by spreading their message, and maybe they have a service that you can recommend as well. So that is what a podcast really is about. It's about relationships, it's about having guests, and it's not necessarily about cranking out the content, and it's not necessarily about what's spoken, which is cool and helpful, but the content that you should really be providing on your show is what comes from those outside guests and their unique perspective and their unique solutions. We both know that you can't be everyone to everybody. We both know that you can't know and learn and teach everything. That's why you have these outside experts come in to your show. And because you're one of those few people that really is present with your guests, that really asks your guests amazing questions. You're one of the few people that sets up a podcast and shows up and consistently puts out episodes. That is the way you can stand out. Many people have imposter syndrome about podcasting. They say, who am I to make a podcast? There's like 4 million podcasts. Don't all the podcasts already exist? There's the average podcast lasts 6 episodes, then dies. How do I avoid becoming one of those statistics? Well, you show up with excellence and you stick to it and you say, I chose podcasting because I know I need to have myself in the search results more often. I know I need to post to social media consistently. And I know I need to take this networking thing seriously. I can't just leave it to chance of whoever happens to find me on Google or who I happen to come across on LinkedIn, or maybe I'll go to a few networking events per year and leave really frustrated. Instead, go out there and get it. Be proactive. Approach people. Find people that you find interesting. And maybe they haven't been on a podcast before, and this is their first chance to do it. And they'll have a lot of fun with you, and they'll do something with you that they've never done before, and they'll get to talk about themselves, and you'll flatter them, and you'll make them feel really good. And when they give you answers, you'll kind of repeat it back in your own words, and they'll say, man, this person, Robert Plank, or whatever, fill in the blank with your name, this person really gets it because they understand my ideas, and they told me how they can apply that to their business, and they're not trying to compete with me. They're not trying to one-up my statements. They're just saying like, hey, I liked how you said this, and it made me think that, and that led me to this next question. And this is just the way that you can make some of these things consistent. So if you knew about this, how many podcasts would you do? Would you do 10? Would you do 100? Would you do 1,000? Well, people have all kinds of objections, right? I don't have time for that. Well, what if it was just 20 or 30 minutes per week? What if it was just 4 times per week, and you just found the 4 most important people that you should be speaking to? People that maybe could refer you, people that could buy from you, people that you want to get a deeper relationship with or reconnect with. You find those people on LinkedIn. Maybe you're just trying to warm up a prospect. I do that all the time. I'm talking to someone, maybe I want them to hire me to narrate their audiobook or hire me to run their podcast, and they're just not budging. Well, what do we do? And maybe they're barely even paying attention to LinkedIn or the messages that I'm sending, or they just don't see the value in what I provide. I get them on a podcast, and it's an instant increase in likability from that person to you. They're on your podcast, they have fun, and they like you more because you made the smart decision of having an even smarter person appearing on your podcast, which is them. So think about that. Me and my team can make it simple for you and easy. For you, we do the hard part. We free up your time. We free up the technical details. Any social platform where you feel like you don't even have a presence right now, or you don't post or log in very often, or maybe you do post, but it could be more, Facebook, TikTok, X, Substack, LinkedIn, Medium, Blogger, your own website, YouTube Shorts. Did we mention Facebook and Facebook Reels? I think we did, but you get the idea. Is just tell us where you want us to post your podcast. And we know how to make a podcast work for anything. We can transcribe it, run it through ChatGPT, make it into a LinkedIn blog post, make it into a shorter LinkedIn post. We can cut up the video into reels and put them on there as TikToks with music, with transitions, with B-roll, with captions. Imagine you just trying to figure out one of these pieces of software or hiring someone to do it. Why not just have me and my expert team at dfypodcast.com do it? So think about this. Do this. Apply this. Appreciate this. A podcast is not just a content channel. It's your networking tool that you can use to make others look good because they have stuff to promote. They want publicity. And hey, maybe if someone's on your show, maybe you can then be on their show to promote your book or your company, or at the very least, you're associated with these other thought leaders and they're associated with you, and maybe they can introduce you to someone else or vice versa. Amazing things happen, and amazing things happen consistently when you use podcasting as your networking tool and not just your content tool, and not just something that you daydream or fantasize about doing some point in the future. Do it now. Stop thinking. Start taking action. Talk to me, find me, message me, Robert Plank from dfypodcast.com. Like and subscribe. Let's make it happen. Let me and my team start your new podcast, or bring your old podcast back from the dead. Or if you have a current podcast, but you're so frustrated with maybe the cost for your existing production team, you're so frustrated with doing it yourself, you're so frustrated with the time that your own in-house team is doing it, why not hand off part or all of these tasks to me, and you focus on the higher level skills, those higher level tasks and activities of finding great guests for your show, following up with them. After you do the podcast, set up a discovery call, set up a sales strategy call, and develop these existing relationships and create new relationships with podcasting. Robert Plank, Done For You Podcasting.